tsunami washed over 5 nations, when a lethal tsunami washed over 5 nations, the whole world stopped to help.
It just erupted. It was like a volcano in terms of generosity, quite historical and unprecedented.
But obviously, more needs to be done.
I met people who said, I've given once, twice, 3 times, but it's not enough. Can I go? Can I do something?
People dropped everything to help strangers on the other side of the world. Were these the actions of a selfish species? Or could new science finally reveal the true nature of humankind?
On the bus ride down here, I was incredibly apprehensive. But that was completely overridden by such a strong desire to come here. I just wanted to come back without a clue what I could do.
Charlotte Eaton, a piano teacher from London, has returned to a favourite holiday spot. No longer the picture postcard she once loved. Putting herself at risk physically and emotionally, she's working one-on-one with locals, helping them rebuild their livelihoods.
Ratnasiri. I was lucky enough to have some cash in the bank, which obviously meant that I could just get on straight away. So I started off just spending my money, and then over the last week or two, I've had money come in to my account from family and friends at home. One of the ideas I had when I got here was just to start people's business again. Like, people have lost just their simple, equipment, whatever. The roti shop, straight away I looked at and I just thought I'd really like to get him started again. Sisulu, I went yesterday to buy some things for you.
Yes.
And I think it's best if you come and you choose for your new restaurant.
Yeah.
Also, what kind of cooker do you need?
I need only one, not this.
Not a big one like this.
I want
Just
one.
Well, tomorrow we'll go and buy stuff. And then maybe he can actually start cooking the next day. And then I'll buy a load of rotis off him and go and, there are plenty of people that need some food around here who are also starting a business. Can you come at 12:30?
Yeah.
So we meet here 12:30 and we'll
Okay.
go
Okay.
and buy your things. That'd be
Yeah.
very good. We live such luxurious lives in the West. I mean, I come from a background that's middle class. Really, what more do you want? Like, come on. It's enough. It's more than enough. It's so much more than people here are ever going to see.
Being altruistic means that you're willing to help others at a cost to yourself.
The word comes from the Latin alter, meaning other, the other person.
Altruism, to take it literally, means other regarding, concern for others. There's also a second dimension, which is some sort of sacrifice to self.
But does true altruism really exist?
How could you possibly answer the question, is there a such thing as altruism, when the greatest minds of all time have been on completely different sides on that issue?
So if I help you and it turns out that I feel good by helping you, is that still altruistic? If I thought I was buying a ticket to heaven, is that altruistic?
The main and only game in town now for the next week to 2 weeks is the epidemic risk, and that's to do with public preventative medicine.
John Cooper, an Australian doctor, cancelled a family holiday to come and help. His main concern is stopping disease in the minority Tamil territories, a region already torn by civil war, now devastated by the tsunami.
If we don't do something urgently about that now, then we're going to have epidemics, and as you read in the papers, and it's not an exaggeration, another 150,000 people will die. I function at a better level as a person when I'm in this environment. I push myself more, I get the best out of myself. Back home I can be lazy, and then I get very irritable with myself. I suppose I look forward to performing at a higher level. I feel as though sometimes that my whole life should be lived at that level.
Tom's managed to get us a USAID helicopter today that's going to fly out to Ampara. We're going to fill it up with essentials. It's got to go in about 10 minutes. So
John is about to enter a war zone and risk a potentially lethal outbreak of disease, all to help total strangers. The question is, why?
Well, in biology, altruism is a special puzzle. And the reason is that evolution is all about survival of the fittest, and so those who traits which cause individuals to survive and reproduce better than others, that's what we should expect to see. And therefore, an altruistic trait that causes others to survive and reproduce better than oneself should not evolve at all. And so altruism appears maladaptive from an evolutionary perspective.
William Hamilton and Robert Trivers and others, Richard Dawkins, used very powerful mathematical techniques, including game theory, population biology, to show that altruism could not exist. Because if one member of a species is nice to another, the other benefits and he loses. So the one who loses, the gene that made him altruistic, will exit the population. And in the long run, you can only have self-interested agents.
If it is true that altruism is impossible, why is it that humans feel so compelled to help?
I'm originally a teacher, and I was led by my angels to this profession, what I'm doing right now. And I know I have a very important mission in this field.
Fairy Tish, a Hungarian aid worker, is working 20-hour days to get fresh drinking water to the hardest hit eastern coast.
We are going to distribute some 18,000 liters of high-quality drinking water and also 500 water purification kits. If you are helping, you know that you are on the right way towards the light. You feel it. It doesn't need to explain it. It's not something for the mind, this is something for the heart. You just know this is the way.
Kindness seems to be all around us. But orthodox evolutionists argue it's selfishness that drives human nature, right down to our very core.
Everything about the body of a living organism can be interpreted as if it were a machine that's struggling and striving to preserve its genes, i.e. surviving into the future. A gene is selfish because it preserves itself, and it does so partly by making the bodies that it gets into survive, but it also does it by making the bodies that it gets into look after other bodies that are likely to contain the same gene.
If you're nice to a genetic relative, then there's a statistical chance that that your relative has the same genes as yours, because after all, you got them from the same place, from some ancestor. So if you're my identical twin, I should value your welfare equally to my own. But as our relatedness goes down, then my interest in you goes down, until by the time you're a stranger, I don't care about you at all.
Looking after our families makes biological sense. But what about altruism beyond our families? Could it be simply selfishness in disguise?
In Darwinism, there are two reasons why an animal might be altruistic. One is kinship, looking after relatives. The other is the, quote, expectation of getting favors repaid in the future. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Those are two perfectly good Darwinian reasons for being altruistic.
Reciprocal altruism is the term used by biologists for what we commonly call tit for tat, which is, I'll help you if you help me. I'll help you today if you help me tomorrow. But if I help you today and when I need it tomorrow you don't help me, then our relationship is over. So reciprocal altruism is really not altruism at all. It's really what they call enlightened self-interest.
Is all altruism enlightened self-interest?
Where did you get all the tables and stuff from?
For Charlotte, in helping to reopen this makeshift bar, there is no apparent payback.
I'm hoping there's going to be a few people here, but more than that, I'm hoping that people around here who live in the village will see that people are here and that people are coming and feel some confidence that people are going to come back. The way to start is definitely just to get 1 or 2 businesses going and to have the word out that people are here. Everyone knows that people died here. Like, everyone knows that people have lost such an incredible amount here. And I think you can only look at people like this and admire their bravery.
Like Charlotte, humans seem programmed to help, but for no obvious reward. A new wave of evolutionists have a theory as to why.
Altruism evolved in a number of ways, but the idea that individual selection, natural selection, is the only driving force in evolution does not account for altruism to strangers. It may account for altruism for family, and it may account for altruism to friends, reciprocal altruism, but it doesn't really account for our remarkable altruism to strangers.
If there's an altruist and a non-altruist interacting with each other, it's the non-altruist that gains, and so there's a local advantage to selfishness. On the other hand, an altruistic group is going to do much better than a selfish group, and that's just as fundamental.
And one way altruism has evolved to the extent it has in our species is that groups that have a high percent of cooperators do better in competition with groups who don't.
Selfishness beats altruism within groups. Altruistic groups beat selfish groups. Everything else is commentary.
Even today, loyalty to one's group can be a driving force.
We'll go right into Trincomalee, and then we'll head up the supposedly intact road up to a couple of villages that have been totally wiped out.
The expats on John's team are returning to help their group.
A lot of expats wanting to come here, wanting to help, because we have many who have left over time, especially after the 83 riots. If I can compare that, it'll be like the Jews outside Israel, helping Israel. I think it's the same thing. That's the only parallel I can draw.
That is gone.
Yeah.
First time I've seen concrete buildings.
And look at this, it's paradise, isn't it? What a beautiful spot. A little inlet and the ocean and palm trees, and now it's all gone. So you get a sense of it, don't you? Its power, and there would have been many deaths here. There would have been a lot of drownings.
After scouring the ruins, a local has approached Charlotte with an idea for a small business.
I think the most important thing is that they're willing to invest time and effort before any money goes in. So he's gone and found that trolley. They had a small shop before, and the idea is that just to get this kitted out as a shop, well, as far as I'm concerned, all you really need is like boards and maybe some kind of sides. Maybe not even that. They'd like to put a roof on it as well. So, you know, obviously, the more we can spend on stock, the more money they're going to make. But then I don't understand what it's like to have a shop and be wheeling it around during the day. Maybe it's necessary to get a roof. I mean, could we not use like something like this? It's been very difficult to know how to budget. And I was trying to pull their price down, but I just can't resist. Like, that was just such a good idea. And it's such a nice thing to think. And they're so keen to go for it. I really do feel that human nature rests on the positive side. I think people would like to think otherwise, and I just don't believe it. It's just not what I see.
What side does human nature rest on? Why has selfishness become our trademark?
For the last 50 years, we've been living in an individualistic world. All sorts of assumptions about the nature of humans, interactions, the way we are, what counts as human nature, and so on and so forth. in which, in this particular modern belief system, the individual is primary. It's the center of the universe. So now we see individuals clearly, but we don't see groups. And it's beyond our imagination to think of us serving our groups. It's so much of our worldview that it seems natural that that's the way we should be as a species. So it's only by a slow process that we can see that this is the way our culture is, but it's not the way we are.
The paradigm, the selfish paradigm, is very pervasive because it's conscious. We're aware of our darker impulses. We may not talk about them, we may keep them. We may be terribly ashamed of them, but they're conscious. I think often we're not conscious of how much we sacrifice helping other people. So while the perspective, the paradigm has been one of selfishness, it's missing a whole piece of the picture.
After 15 hours driving, aid worker Ferry has reached the devastated Ampara district, where nearly 10,000 people were lost.
So how many people died here in Kalmunai?
This village about 4,500. This is about a
It's unbelievable.
It's about
What happened to the people here and to these houses here?
40 houses were there in a housing scheme.
Here?
You can see, right? All 40 houses now washed off. 90% of the people were there.
If you imagine a peaceful Sunday morning, people sitting in their houses, 8:30, 8:40, and the next moment, everything is gone. Could you find words for this?
John and his team have reached their first refugee camp.
I think we'll find this is what we call a low-risk camp. Everyone's pretty relaxed. There's been 6 deaths here, so in the overall scheme of things, I guess they got off fairly lightly compared to the 300 and 400 deaths we've seen in some areas per sort of kilometre almost. I'll give you some ointment that'll make it better, okay? How are you?
The debate on if and how altruism evolved continues. But the search for a biological basis to altruism is only just beginning. And new science is finding evidence deep within the folds of our brains.
The physiological side of altruism is very strong. I mean, we're not just altruists because we have some intellectual notion that it's good to be nice to others. We have a whole variety of biological accoutrements that lead us to be altruistic.
It feels good to help people. We all know that. It's rewarding in and of itself, and it also provides a real chemical rush through the flood of oxytocin and in the reward center, the flood of dopamine, and we feel good.
People call it sometimes being a conflict junkie, I suppose. You do get so much out of it, and going back to a mundane sort of day-to-day 9-to-5 existence is quite a contrast.
But the age-old philosophical question raises its head. Does feeling good by helping cancel out the altruism?
It's a natural element or aspect or feature of human beings that they do have bonds of sympathy with other human beings, and therefore that often at least helping other human beings is something that gives them pleasure. That in no way makes the action not altruistic.
you come away from it sometimes feeling tired but elated that that you've had an adventure and an experience and you've helped someone. And it's selfish in a way. I get a lot out of it. It's totally unique.
Just because you get some payback, why should it therefore be interpreted as fundamental selfishness when the thing that got you going in the first place was your compassionate empathy, your emotional reaction to someone's suffering?
If the need to alleviate suffering is wired into the human brain, how does it work? What are the biological mechanisms that trigger this impulse to help?
I think with Nandika, she's probably the most obviously distressed person that I've met, or maybe that family is, and I feel worried for that family. I get the impression that her daughter's really keeping her everything inside, and I find that quite worrying to see.
Local seamstress Nandika lost her 4-year-old son and her livelihood.
She had quite a big shop that she built up over quite a long time with a lot of material in it, but she's lost an incredible amount in stock. Probably an irreplaceable amount, I'd say. The remnants of her sewing machine and the dress that she wore on her last birthday. Nandika herself is in a terrible state of grief, but is talking.
And I found my son's body, nearly her came up.
And her elder daughter found her younger brother's body and carried him, tried to help him, but obviously it was too late by then. And Nandika was also saying that she can't move on, she keeps thinking that he's going to come back, that she finds his clothes and she's still finding his things in the rubble. She turned up his bike. I suppose it's just another reason why they need these things cleared as quickly as possible. They shouldn't have to live with this mess and the smell and everything else. We're sitting in the ruins of people's lives.
Empathy is the ability to feel what others are feeling, to respond internally, to have an emotional reaction that mirrors what the other person's feeling. And we seem to have it from birth. Babies cry when they hear other babies crying. And they cry harder than if they hear a tape recording of their own crying. So they seem to know the difference between themselves and others.
The mechanistic basis for it is being discovered in the form of mirror neurons. So there are actually neurons which are capable of observing, in a sense, what someone else is doing. And then within your own brain, the same circuits that would be activated if you were doing it yourself are activated when you see somebody else doing it. And so you really do feel the pain or the joy that someone else is experiencing.
We have evolved. Individuals who don't feel that, who don't feel empathy, have severe problems in society.
Almost all humans are hardwired to respond empathically to another's suffering. But is it enough to make us help?
You might feel empathically, and then you might not do anything about it. It's as if there's two steps that you take. There's someone suffering. Now you say, oh, that's too bad. So you're feeling empathic. But then you say, well, whatever, and you don't do anything. Or you take both steps. You both feel bad, and you decide to do something about it.
Well, Nandika, I hope it will help trying to get you started with your business again.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll start you off with some materials, for sarongs.
Yeah.
And you try and sell again.
Yeah.
2 meters, okay. And also for their clothes, dolls' clothes.
Empathy motivates altruism. And when the tsunami crashed across our television screens, our empathy was shocked into action.
You have to be able to see it. You have to be able to empathize with it. And as long as it's abstract, people can't empathize with it. In Star Wars, you see whole planets getting poofed off just like that. Millions of people, you don't cry over that. You don't know who's on that planet. They're nothing to you. It has to be real.
Rescue agencies say the death toll from the tsunamis in the Indian Ocean could reach 100,000.
Well, I can't think of anything that isn't immeasurably enhanced by visual presentation. You demand it because you can't really be fulfilled in your empathy until you can see it in front of you.
While so often we turn our backs on suffering, the tsunami's potent mix of signals made the tragedy our own.
A similar event in another place that's very foreign to us would have been very different. For instance, there are periodic floods in Bangladesh that cause immense amounts of havoc. But they're all poor people. They're all poor farmers. There are no beautiful surfs. There are no big hotels. If there had been no visuals, if we hadn't seen the waves, if we hadn't seen people being washed away, if we hadn't seen people crying and looking for their loved ones, if we hadn't seen notes posted up, if you see so-and-so, please, his family's looking for him, it would have just been a bunch of numbers in the newspaper. It wouldn't have meant a thing.
Dr. John Cooper and his team have finally reached the border control to cross over into war-torn Tamil land.
We're just crossing from the government-held territory of Sri Lanka into Tamil-controlled country, and which is very significant, especially to the people in the bus, because for many of them it's probably the first time in here, and it's a big moment for them, and probably for all of us.
For the expats in the group, this is their first visit back to their homeland since fleeing the conflict 20 years earlier.
I think they felt very, very guilty for not being there. When we see someone suffering, an alarm goes off in us. We get this discomfort. And I think that discomfort is guilt. We feel guilty, like we're supposed to do something. It makes you feel uncomfortable, kind of anxious. It's very hard to describe. And it's one of the few emotions that's really hidden. And it motivates us to altruistic action. Immigrants often feel that way, that they feel very, very guilty for having it better off than the people they left behind.
For me, part of it is guilt, the fact that I managed to be one of the few lucky ones. The other part, of course, I'm Sri Lankan. I was born here, and I do have a deep interest in this country and the people here. So for me, it's a combination of the two, really. So I couldn't think of anything other than to try and stop and help here. And I think a lot of other people here feel the same way too.
A special kind of guilt, I think, that we all felt when we saw that wave come across so many nations and so many people. We felt what I think of what we're calling now survivor guilt. And that concept was first talked about in the wake of the Holocaust. There were very depressed people. They were feeling like, what right do I have to be alive when my whole family was killed? We've expanded it to many situations where you feel better off than someone. So when you see a beggar, you feel better off and you get very uncomfortable and you feel like you should do something, or you can't even bear to look at them because you feel so guilty about their distress and their condition compared to yours. We've seen in our research that survivor guilt seems to really be significantly associated with kindness to strangers, with altruistic acts extended to strangers.
Guilt is another powerful motivator for altruism, but not the last.
This is the room for the first 20 tsunami victims. These are new beds We have new pillows, new mattresses, new bed sheets, everything. Ilanka? The guys started to purchase those items that we need, and also we got a list of names, and they have already started to take pictures about the children, and today we have to continue this work.
Oh, you are so beautiful. You are so beautiful with this. Come on.
When we came here, the first question of ours was how we can help them. And we had big plans to reconstruct the kitchen, to give clothes, and to establish a library and a computer room. And we really had big plans. And we asked the guys here, hey, what do you need? And almost all of them told us food, which was not easy to listen to.
If humans were selfish, perfectly self-interested, they would only care about what they get. They wouldn't care about what other people get. But that's not the way humans are. Humans care not only about what they get, but how it compares to what other people get. And in particular, whether it's fair that what they get is different from what other people get. Most people have a predisposition to cooperate with others and will continue cooperating as long as others cooperate back. But they also have a strong predisposition to punish others who don't cooperate. You can prevent the breakdown of cooperation in society by punishing those who don't cooperate. That leads even very selfish people to end up cooperating most of the time. And the punishing side of altruism, we think, is very, very important.
In some ways, that is the hallmark of our species, is to be aggressively egalitarian. And when we see somebody doing much better than us, especially if they get their benefits illegitimately, then of course they have the full fury of our moral indignation.
The government's absolutely dreadful, but they should never have put the money into the government's hands. Like they knew before.
Oh, I agree with you, this.
For Charlotte and other volunteers, a strong sense of justice and fairness drives their altruism.
The Western world donated so much money. Where is it? Can you please tell me, where is it? Not even 1 rupee. Sorry, but this makes me angry. They are living here less than animals. Look over there. Look, these people. They are... Even a pig in Holland is not allowed to live in this... And they say they are human beings.
Government ministers live a horrendously luxurious lifestyle. They live a luxurious lifestyle by Western standards. Multiply that by thousands compared to how people live here, and you get an idea of the gap. That's not sustainable. And maybe they're too stupid to know that, but it's not. It's going to come crashing down one day. The one government handout that they've had here, they got a kilo of rice and 250 grams of dal per family. What do they think that's going to do? And they've not been back since.
And in societies where the people at the top are considered to be illegitimate, that they don't deserve to be where they are, usually because they're not producing on behalf of the rest of society, there's a lot of ill will and there's a lot of social unrest, and often leads to the decay of society or revolution.
One day, these people are going to feel that anger. I really hope they do. That the government are planting seeds for rebellion and seeds for revolution. They're planting anger in these people.
If I thought that my efforts would end up in your pocket, I wouldn't cooperate. And if you take that idea and you run it back into deep time so that it affected our genetic evolution of the way we think, you can say that we have instincts for equality, and we have instincts for maintaining equality, which operate very successfully at a small scale. So successfully we don't ever think about it. The problem comes with large-scale society.
just going into a camp now. It's reporting its first cases of bloody diarrhea, in other words, dysentery, which is really worrying. We've been worried about this for some time, and it looked as though we were going to get away with it even as recently as yesterday. We just want to speak to the head doctor if we can, because he was the one we got the emergency note from, and they thought we were going to drive past, I think. So, poor people. So they sent someone about 20 kilometres after us, and we've just come back about 20 kilometres. In Rwanda, I've seen awful cholera epidemic in huge camps of 200,000 people, killing 1,000, 10,000 people a day. I worked in a children's orphanage which became an acute hospital overnight because of the cholera epidemic, and we were losing 10 and 20 orphan children a night. So I know about epidemics.
Now this is they've collected all the names of those who've got diarrhea at the moment, and there are about 30 of them here, you can see. Yeah. And the ones that I've marked with red there,
Bloody diarrhea,
yeah.
4 cases.
Yeah, so that is a bit worrying.
Chandra, we've got what may be an emergency on our hands. We've got what appears to be the start of a potentially a dysentery outbreak in the Vaharai district. We need to get specimens back to Colombo to do some pathology, and we're wondering if you could send a helicopter up urgently. I feel very good about helping individuals, just a little bit. I'm not saving the world, and I'm just trying to get a little bit of help to a few people, and hoping that they sleep at night a little bit better because they're feeling a little bit better and they think someone cares.
If humans are hardwired to care, what is it that makes one person more compassionate than another?
I don't think there's many people who are fated to be either altruistic or selfish. I think everyone has the flexibility to move within a certain range.
How much is genetic and how much is environmental is a great question that everybody's attending to. When you think about genes aren't a fixed thing. Genes are like a city at night with the lights sparkling, and they're turning on and off all the time. And environmental conditions have a great deal to do with when they get turned on and when they get turned off.
While we may be born with our own genetic disposition, these are then shaped by experience, and some experiences can be life-changing.
Like, I was very depressed during my teens, my late teens and early 20s, for years, really quite kind of blackly depressed. And for years, I kind of lived with my own threat of killing myself. Like, I didn't want to live, and I finally kind of pulled myself through that, and started to get on and move on. And I think it's had the effect on me of paring down everything that's important in life. Like, now, I think it's given me a lot of freedom. Like, I think I'm very aware of what matters in life. I think what matters for me is what's inside people and the essence of people, and I think that's what pulled me through.
People who are very, very high in empathy may also be high in proneness to sadness and depression. People used to think that depressed people were non-empathic because they looked to be very self-centered and focused on themselves, but the truth is that they're usually worrying about other people.
I think having faced something so dark myself, I would never want other people to face it. It's quite nice to think that you can support people through where possible, and it's so easy here as well. You know, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that I'm in the position of coming here in my mid-20s to people who've been working hard all their lives, have had their careers, and I'm in the position of giving them back their livelihood. You know, it's ridiculous. But I am, so I can. You need knives? Which knives? Yeah, knives. I don't really want to hear how thankful they are, or, I'd like them to just get on with their lives again. And seeing them in business, I find that very gratifying. I don't really know what I'm doing, to be honest. I don't know about cookers.
Clothes, table cloth. These look very nice, no?
But I reckon it must be maybe the equivalent of about 40, 50 quid to get someone started in business again, which, is obviously bugger all, really. So it seems like money well spent.
If humans are capable of selfishness and kindness, societies are a delicate balancing act between cooperation and competition.
You take 30 people, 50 people from anywhere, put them on a desert island, they'll actually function pretty well, just by instinct. But anything larger than that, you have to add something, and we call that culture in a sense. Institutions, sacred things and people. Religion comes in at that point, at least organized religion, and government comes in. If it gets larger than that, then you have to do something culturally in order to keep it together.
In a hunter-gatherer society, there are no courts, there are no police, there are no soldiers. Now, once you get beyond hunter-gatherer, as soon as you have settled agriculture, then you have private property, then you can amass means of coercion and control, and you can get hierarchical societies.
Today, groups are large, and culture steps in to maintain cooperation and keep our selfishness in check.
Humans are very different in a number of ways, and one of those ways is that we have big enough brains cognitively to be aware of the future. So although to a fairly large extent we are governed by primitive rules of thumb, we also have the ability to look ahead and to see what's coming, to decide what would be best for the future, which is not something that's ever arisen in nature before.
We really do have a choice. The stories we tell, the ethical, religious sources that we use to nourish young people. And those stories can nourish altruism and compassion, or they can intensify discrimination and fear and marginalize people. It really is a choice.
Choice may indeed set us aside from other animals.
18,000 liters water. Great. The blankets. And behind the blankets we have this water purification kits for some 500 families. This is great.
For some, the choice to help goes far beyond physical science.
If you help someone or if you give something to someone, you know that you are on the right way towards the light. You feel it. In the moment, a smiling angel will appear between him and you will just feel it. Also, he will feel it. Something happens. So giving is not just something material, giving is at the same time spiritual. So angels are our leaders in our way. They are just walking hand in hand with us. If we learn how to listen to them, they will take us to those people who really need us. Hi, Boam. Alaikum salam. Salam. In my work as aid worker, giving must be just giving. It means you go there without any expectations, without selecting your beneficiaries. Needy people shall get what they need. It means you go there, you give what they need, and you live. Because many times when we love or when we give, we have lots of expectations or considerations in the background, which makes the whole procedure wrong in a way. And I'm learning this through my work as well, how to love. for example, how to love. The sun is just there and the sun is just shining without telling who shall get from the sunshine and who shall not get from the sunshine. This is the same thing what we have to learn, how to give, how to help, just like this.
Well, I'll come back. I'll bring him back, and I'll bring your money later. That's been a really interesting thing here, like trying to work out what people have in mind when they talk about their business, or whatever. I've never been able to understand until you see the finished product, and also like the same with what they want to buy. Like you just don't know what they're talking about really until you buy it and you see them set up again. But yeah, this is what you wanted. It's looking nice. See you, lads.
Science may soon prove humans are as programmed to help as to harm. But humans themselves have shown we can be as cruel as we can be kind.
Group selection produces groups whose members are very nice towards each other, but their interactions with other groups are going to be competitive, predatory, and you'll see individuals who are as good as gold towards each other in the process of exterminating other groups. And that's what we see with humans, isn't it?
Evolution has left humans capable of extreme selfishness and profound kindness. The interplay between our genes and our environment allows us to switch at will.
And what that means is that we're amazingly flexible. We're capable of turning off our altruism 100% towards individuals that we regard as the enemy. That is part of our operating equipment. That's standard equipment for the human.
Does this flexibility to hate one minute and love the next doom us or save us? Is there a simple yet profound way forward?
I think altruism is always an in-group phenomenon. We're always altruistic to people in our group. What changes is the definition of the group. Previously, groups were very small or very homogeneous. Now we identify with large groups. We identify with all people who believe in X, or all human beings. We now believe that the people who suffer from the tsunami halfway around the world are still part of our group. It could have been me. It could have been my son who was washed away. But it wasn't. It was her son who was washed away. She's part of my group.
And the most moral people, the most morally enlightened people, their group is the planet. In which case it is your group. If it's the fellowship of man, then it's your group. The group is what you define it to be.
There's a tendency more and more to identify with being human rather than simply with being this race or this ethnic group or this religion. In a society that's got four groups and that speak different languages and come from different backgrounds and have different colors, the culture has to change to allow them to be to talk to one another and to care about one another. And all of this has changed, I think, because of the nature of human communication and transportation. You can see what other people are doing. You can see what they're experiencing. You can feel for them, even if they're your enemy in some ways.
I think things have really changed in England for my generation. So many people travel, and so many people have just such a wider view, much better understanding. And so many people are choosing to settle abroad or have half their life abroad or whatever. You know, once you've got those kind of connections, they die hard, I think.
Could it be possible to simply expand the sense of group and so extend our kindness and compassion even further? Does the response to the tsunami offer a glimpse of what's possible?
There's sometimes human beings are all human beings. We suddenly all become in group. And I think that was one of those moments where everybody was the in group.
I remember my grandma saying about the war that she really felt strongly that if people travelled and they knew a place personally, it would be very hard to bomb it. I think she's absolutely right.
Since the past 30, 40, 50 years, there's been a tremendous movement towards recognizing that human beings have the capacity for respecting and loving others who are different from themselves and rejoicing in those differences in a way which humanity has never felt before.
There's a few of us going home in the next day or two. The results of the tests on the fecal samples from the East Coast were negative. So, to date, no epidemics. And the main issue now is resettling people and finding houses. This has been the best coordinated, most passionate campaign from you guys that I've ever seen. I'm pretty relieved because I wouldn't have been going home tonight. If there had been an outbreak, I would have stayed. But I'm really pleased for the people. It's an ongoing worry, though.
How long's the guarantee?
1 year.
1 year. Oh, that's nice. It looks like we're going to get the same kind of model that she had before, which is quite nice. Kind of ultimate charity in a way is to do what I'm doing, like is to actually physically be on the spot, give someone what they need, you know, and I can go home to people who put cash in my bank account and say, you personally have just bought someone a sewing machine and here's the picture of it. So if you never do anything again for the rest of your life, you gave someone their business back. It's good? Yeah? Just looked earlier at my bank account and there's been like quite a few more donations from people, which is really nice.
New chairs and new pots. So I'm going to start my work from today. So I'm happy.
If you are helping, if you are giving, the angels will be there and you will feel them. It's warm. You can feel it. Everybody who gets something in the present, a rose, red rose, you know that if someone gives you a red rose, something is going on, something is happening. It's not just about the red rose, but you can feel it. Yeah, maybe the angels are there.
People that I meet, that I talk to, often have a very negative view of humans and human instinct, which seems so strange, because if you're not behaving like that yourself, why would you presume that other people are?
So I'm going to start my work again. I am very happy.
But I also find that if you concentrate on the positive, you draw it from people. And that's definitely been the case here.
This is my first roti after the tsunami. Starting roti. Roti.
Go to American soon.